Um, First of all, thank you for the invitation. And we have, as an institution, as a UG Pines Institute, we have a good appreciation. We have a good connection with individuals in Bahamas. We know that we have been having many students, right? And we have a very, very good connection with the country of Bahamas. I will be sharing a topic today that a few years ago, around 2016, 2017, right? I started to be interested on it. And it's a therapeutic fasting, right? Sometimes we don't realize how prevention is so powerful, right? All the time we talk about water, we talk about sleep, but we don't know or we don't realize the impact of all these very simple habits are going to change our life. I came here in 2014, and basically I was coming from the school, from the medical school, and in my mind, well, I thought that I knew many things, how to treat individuals, but only with the conventional background, right? I never saw before someone or a person to reverse diabetes. I never saw before someone or a person to reverse hypertension or how to manage individuals with cancer until I came here to UG Pines, right? And one of the first topics when I became part of the medical staff was fasting. I believe that in 2017, a book was released that's called the longevity diet. I mean, if you are able to get this book, it will be a good idea. That longevity diet. Okay. This book, it's gonna give you another insight about all the benefits about fasting. I mean, nowadays we have a many, or a lot of information about this therapy. However, let's start with a very brief introduction of how the world is in, or how the conditions, how the disease is related, right, with our quality of life. Let's take a look in the 1900s. In the 1900s, 53% of the population, at least here in US, they were dying a consequence of what? Infectious diseases, okay? 53%. Remember that back in the 1900s, we didn't have medications like antibiotics, right? We didn't have those strong medications or antiviral medications, probably, right? And let's see here, only 12% they were dying a consequence of heart conditions. 10% they were related to diabetes. But 100 years apart, it has been a dramatic shift. Infectious disease is not the problem anymore, but the main problem, it has been heart conditions like hypertension, heart attacks, strokes. But my question is here, do you think, friends, that all these conditions we will be able to prevent? Nathalie mentioned something very important, is prevention, right? And we are here not to learn how to prevent these conditions, but also how to reverse some of these conditions. But prevention, 33% of the population are dying a consequence of hypertension, well, not just hypertension, but the whole spectrum of heart conditions, which include hypertension, stroke, heart attacks, right? But the other 32% are related to cancer. But here's my question, because Yeah, well, here only 4%, apparently 4%, it's just related to diabetes. But friends, the main complications of diabetes, it's going to be what? Heart conditions. Okay, that's going to be the main complication, heart conditions. And individuals with diabetes, they don't specific diet because diabetes, but they are going to die because complications of heart conditions. However, one of the common denominators of these cancer, heart conditions, diabetes specific, right, is going to be something overweight or obesity. And let's take a look. This is an example, okay? I will share something about the situation in Bahamas as well. Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana. You know that we are located in Alabama, Tennessee, South Carolina. They are the main states with the highest rates of obesity here in United States. By the way, Canada, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, they are the lowest states. We don't have here Hawaii, but Hawaii is the lowest. Well, Hawaii is here, I believe. Yeah, this is Hawaii. This is the Hawaii is the lowest state of the United States with the rates of obesity. That's something very important. I had the opportunity to be in Hawaii 2 years ago, sharing a seminar about lifestyle medicine. And something that caught my attention is this. Yeah, Hawaii is the lowest state with the rates of obesity. But when you classify the individuals by ethnicity, well, you will see that Koreans, Japanese, Chinese, Filipinos, right? They have the lowest rates of obesity. But when you have the Pacific Islanders, right? Ethnicity or individuals or the population, right? Well, we have a problem because they have the highest rates of being overweight, of obesity, and they have the highest rates of what? Cardiovascular issues, pre-diabetes, diabetes, and all these chronic conditions. And again, these conditions, it's very easy to be preventable. So here we have what? Heart disease death rates, okay? You see the map here? All these red dots are telling me that they are the states with the highest rate of obesity. Can you see here? The same states that they are related with obesity, they are related with hypertension or heart conditions. They are intimate linked, right? These two situations. So let's see here. Rates of cancer deaths in the United States. The same states, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. I didn't mention this in the beginning, but if you have questions, just write your question probably in the chat box. And at the end, we are going to be discussing all of your questions. I believe that we'll have time. So yeah, you can see here, hypertension and cancer, the main two killers of the individuals of the population here in the United States are related with this situation, right? Okay, but let's see something. What's going on in Bahamas? Well, yeah, adults, it's around 43%. Okay, 43% of populations are related with obesity. Okay, 43%, which women, more than 50% are related with these conditions. Let's see here another picture. What are the main conditions that are related with complications or in Bahamas? Well, the first one, heart conditions, heart disease, strokes, but more specific here, ischemic heart disease is more related with heart attacks, okay? But again, I mentioned in the beginning, the main problem of heart disease, friends, in the beginning, 20, 30 years before you had a heart attack, sorry, it's not going to be cholesterol. Well, it's going to be what? Sugars, okay? The sugars, high levels of sugars, high levels of insulin are going to damage the lining of our arteries. And when we have a damage in the lining of our heart vessels, right? You are going to start to have some cholesterol attached into these arteries. And here is the beginning of heart conditions. But 40 years before, probably, or 30 years before, the problem was not cholesterol. Strokes, the same. Diabetes, friends, the same. The problem with diabetes, the main problem with diabetes is something that's called insulin resistance. And insulin resistance is intimately linked with um, um, overweight, right? And well, all these one, two, three, and four conditions, friends, they are very easy to prevent. And in some situations, they are very easy also to reverse. Okay. Well, so, but let's see. I was telling you about 2017, right? When I was started to be aware about this new therapy about fasting, right? And nowadays, everybody's talking about fasting. Everybody's talking about intermittent fasting. But well, so we have the council from when? From the 1900s, 1902. And she mentioned something. There are some who would be benefited more by abstinence from food for a day or two every week than by any amount of treatment or medical advice. Okay? To fast 1 day a week will be what? Of incalculable benefit to them. 1 day a week, day or 2 days every week. You know that there is a physician in Canada that he is reversing diabetes, yeah, with plant-based diet, exercise definitely. But you know what? What's the main treatment for those individuals with diabetes at his clinic? Day or two 1 day or 2 days of fasting every week, or even 1 day a week. To all our guests here in YouTube Pines and my patients, right, I do recommend at least to fast 1 day a week. For students, definitely fasting 1 day a week. For individuals that work in the office, fasting 1 day a week. In general, if you want to enhance your energy capacity, if you want to enhance your cognition, I mean your memory, fasting 1 day a week, it will be great. However, fasting is not for everyone, okay? Fasting is not for everyone. So we are going to discuss all these situations, okay? Fasting, as I mentioned, well, at least this is from the 1900s, right? But we have in the Bible the best example of fasting. Who was Jesus? How many days he was fasting? He was fasting 40 days in the beginning of his ministry, right? Why? Well, so we can see that fasting, it can give you some physical endurance. It can give you some emotional and also spiritual strength, right? And we have also three philosophers, for example, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, right? And they used to recommend fasting to their disciples. And Hippocrates, who was the father of the medicine, right? Hippocrates, who was the father of the medicine, he used to mention something very interesting. Everyone has a physician inside him or her, right? We just have to help it in its work. The natural healing force within each one of us is the greatest force in getting well. And everybody knows this quote, right? Our food should be our medicine, right? Or our medicine should be our food. But it is very important, but to eat when you are sick is to feed your sickness instead of using medicine rather fast a day. So we understand that fasting is not from 2016, 2017, or 2020 that everybody is saying, wow, it's a revolutionary medical treatment that is reversing many of these conditions. Well, so those individuals, and even Jesus, right? They were advocating the use of this therapy for many, many, many benefits, right? Well, so what happens? What happens when we are eating? Okay, and this is kind of to have like a basics understanding about how the feeding state and also the fasting state is going to be working inside your body. Okay, and we have three micronutrients, and the main one, well, not the main ones, there are only three, but the names of these are carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. Okay, and let's see, carbohydrates. Well, we know that carbohydrates, it can be rice, it can be bread, it can be what else? Well, there are some examples of carbohydrates, right? It doesn't matter if it's whole wheat or it's just from white flour, okay? They are carbohydrates, okay? They are not going to be metabolized or breaking down in the same way, right? However, they're still carbohydrates. We need to be careful with those carbohydrates. Okay, carbohydrates, they are going to be breaking down into something that's called glucose, which is sugar, okay? But when we are breaking down this sugar, your body, your brain, it can utilize, it can be used, this sugar as an energy, okay? The first one is as an energy. You are going to be using that sugar as an energy, okay? The second pathway is that you are going to be storing, saving that sugar in your liver and also in your muscles, okay, in order to have energy storage for later. For example, when we are not eating, right, between meals, we are not eating. So where are you getting sugar from? Because you are not eating. Well, you are getting sugar from something that's called glycogen. Okay, glycogen. Like glycogen is just a compound of sugar and water that is going to be stored in your liver and also in your muscle cells. When you're exercising, friends, you are not really burning fat. We are burning just glycogen. We need energy. Well, let's break down glycogen in order to produce sugar, right? Sorry, energy. Well, yeah, sugar, energy, right? However, I'm going to give you an example. If you are, for example, eating, I don't know, any kind of food, right? And you are including some refined carbohydrates, bread, white rice, probably pizza, burgers, right? Um, Cakes, pastries, cookies, whatever. Well, so all these carbohydrates are going to be breaking down very fast into sugar. Very quick, the blood sugar is going to start to rise, okay? At the moment that the blood sugar starts to rise, the insulin, remember what insulin is? The insulin is the hormone that's going to be produced by your pancreas, that your pancreas is the organ that you have here in the middle of your abdomen, in the middle of your stomach. And the work of this organ is to produce insulin, okay? And the work of insulin is what? Well, the main work of insulin is to modulate your blood sugar, okay? But not only that, it's going to produce also more fat, okay? Lipid accumulation or fat accumulation in your liver is going to increase inflammation. It's going to increase what? It says here glycogen. Remember glycogen? Glycogen synthesis. and glycogen synthesis or production in your muscles, okay? And that's the work of the insulin. But what happens? What happens if after your meals, instead of going for a walk, okay, instead of going for a walk, you have the habit, because it's a habit, of take a nap after your lunch or after your breakfast, or most likely after your lunch. Okay, well, you are not going to be using that sugar as energy. You will have a lot of sugar in your system because you are not using that sugar as energy, right? So a lot of sugar in your system. What's going to happen with the insulin? The insulin says, you know what, there is a lot of sugar in your system. Well, let's convert all this sugar into glycogen, sending this glycogen to your liver, to your muscle, in order to have energy for the periods that we are not going to be eating. But guess what? The glycogen has a limit. We cannot convert very high amounts of sugar into glycogen. When you reach that limit, when you say, you know what, when your liver is telling you to your brain, you know what, we cannot convert more glycogen, we are full already. And your muscle said, you know what, we cannot convert more glucose into glycogen. We're stuck of a lot of glycogen. Well, you know what's going to be the work of the insulin? The insulin is going to start, to drop the levels of your glucose, converting all this glucose into what? Into adipose tissue, right? Into fat. But here's the problem. Sending the fat where? Probably, well, not probably, here to your liver, here to your abdomen, probably, right? Adipose tissue. And in many situations, it's going to send all this fat converted, right, into your muscle cells. And friends, this is the main problem of what? One of them, fatty liver, and the other one is going to be insulin resistance, which is the main, well, is the first process to develop prediabetes and then diabetes. But you see how this process is going to be affected. That's why here in UG Pines, or probably you heard also about it, that we do recommend 20 minutes of walk after your meals. Why? Well, because if you are walking 15, 20 minutes, you are going to be using that sugar into energy, right? Converted into energy, you are going to be using that energy. You will have low levels of blood sugar converted into glycogen, and then you will have very low levels of blood sugar converted into fat. You see the point? So this is very important. Okay, well, let's continue with fats, because fats, we need fats, friends. We need cholesterol, okay? We need cholesterol because your brain functions with cholesterol, okay? Your liver functions with cholesterol, okay? By the way, every cell in our body functions with cholesterol. But here's the problem, or here's the thing. Because your liver is able to produce between 1,000 to 1,200 or 1,500 milligrams of cholesterol every day. We don't need more cholesterol from outside, because if we start to take more cholesterol from outside, what's going to happen? Well, all that cholesterol is going to be sent to your liver, sent to your arteries or your vessels in your heart, right? And it's going to be a problem, right? So these fats are going to be breaking down into triglycerides, and we need fats. Why? Because you need fats in order to absorb what? Vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, and vitamin K. You need fats or cholesterol in order to produce testosterone and also estrogens. Your brain needs fats. So, but here's the thing is what type of fats we are eating, okay? And that's the question, and that's the point. Okay, well, so, and the third one is going to be proteins. Proteins, they are going to be broken down in amino acids. And amino acids or proteins, they can also be stored as a glycogen or fat. That's why individuals that they are going to the gym and they are working out, right? And they start to use some type of proteins, right? Specific, probably sometimes whey protein, right? Which is just a cow's serum, right? If they don't do exercise, if they are not burning all these amino acids, right? If they are not using all these amino acids, they start to gain weight and gain weight, gain weight. It's very important, these amino acids, okay? So just remember, carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. This is a very simplistic way how we can see um, how these elements are going to be working. Yeah, I'm echoing what Nathalie's mentioned, right? 15 minutes of digestive walk, right, is recommended each meal, okay? And this is not, well, this is part of your exercise, but at the same time, you have to do exercise, okay? Well, so we spoke about the insulin, okay? And insulin is good, okay? We need insulin because if we don't have insulin in our system, well, so we wouldn't be able to be alive, okay? The blood sugar is going to be very high, and then we can have many issues of this having very high levels of, well, yeah, some acids, right, or fatty acids specific that when we don't have insulin, well, the insulin cannot shut down the production of these fatty acids. Okay, well, so it is good, but it's not good because insulin, friends, is the hormone that's going to makes me increase my weight. Okay, so it's anabolic hormones. It's a growth hormone. Okay, and when I say anabolic, when you hear the word anabolic, just remember anabolic means it's going to be storing energy. Okay, catabolic is breaking down energy, but insulin, if you have a high levels of insulin, it's gonna be very difficult to break down to what fat. It says here, decrease lipolysis. Lipo means fat, lysis means destruction. If we have a high levels of insulin, friends, we are not going to be able to destroy all the fat that is causing a problem, inflammation. Okay, okay. So, but God created us, okay, with another hormone. If the insulin, it's just making my cells to be big or bigger, right? Well, God created us with another hormone that's going to do the opposite, okay? And the opposite hormone is called glucagon, okay? Glucagon. And glucagon is going to be doing the opposite of the insulin, okay? The main trigger for insulin, friends, is going to be sugar. High levels of sugar, high levels of insulin. High levels of insulin, high levels of fat. Okay? Well, let's see glucagon. Glucagon is going to be doing the opposite. Okay? But let's see what the glucagon is going to be doing. Well, the first thing that the glucagon is going to be doing is what? Decrease the production of fat. Increase or elevate the lipid oxidation. What is this? Fat breakdown. And increase the capacity of your liver or increase the function of your liver. In your kidneys, is going to increase what? The function of filtration. Very interesting. In your adipose tissue, I mean, in your fat tissue, most likely in our abdomen, right? It's going to be what? Promoting the destruction of these elements, right? And also in our heart, is going to increase the lipid oxidation, fatty acid oxidations, which is there are some components that your heart needs in order to have a good energy, right? Okay. And for my brain, it's going to also increase the blood flow, and also is going to increase the satiety sensation. So, friends, this glucagon hormone, it's very important. But here is a problem because you will say, okay, well, so I just need to take some of this glucagon, right? Why? Because glucagon is going to help me to break down all these fats. Very simple. Well, so where I can get glucagon, right? Well, yeah, you can get it as an injection, but you will get it only in the hospital when you are having very serious conditions like your blood sugar levels is very, very low, right? But in a very simple situation, right? These two hormones, insulin and glucagon, insulin, here we have here insulin, we have here glucagon produced by the pancreas, friends, they cannot work together, okay? They are antagonistic effects, okay? They have opposite effects, sorry, okay? If the insulin promotes fat storage, the glucagon promote breakdown of the fat. If the insulin promotes production of fat in your liver, the glucagon reduce this. Well, they don't work together, but remember, all the time that you have the insulin high, the glucagon is going to be low all the time. Again, what's the first signal to maintain your insulin high? Another point, eating between meals. If you are eating between meals, the insulin, because you are eating something, it could be even. And we're going to be talking more about eating between meals because that's related to fasting as well. If you're eating between meals, what's going to happen? Well, so the insulin is going to remain high. The glucagon is going to remain very low. And we're never going to get to this point to maintain your liver clean. And friends, if you were diagnosed with fatty liver or prediabetes, well, so having good levels of glucagon, it's the key to reverse these conditions, okay? There is not specific medications for that, but I'm telling you the key, having glucagon levels elevated. But the question is, how do I'm going to have uh, having a good levels of glucagon? Well, so we need to have a balance. If the insulin goes high, the glucagon goes low. What do we need to do? Well, having an equilibrium. In medicine, we call homeostasis, right? The insulin goes down and the glucagon start to go up, rise, okay? But how can I do that? As I mentioned before, right? Walking after your meals, less sugar, less insulin, more glucagon. Not eating between meals, less sugar, less insulin, more glucagon, and you are breaking down probably more fat from your liver. Well, not yet. We're going to be talking about it. Not yet, okay? But you see the point? And what about eating only 2 meals a day? Well, if you are eating only 2 meals a day, it's going to happen something very, very interesting, okay? That is related with glucagon. Remember glycogen, right? Remember this hormone glycogen, okay? Okay, remember this hormone glycogen. Sorry, this component is gonna be in your liver. This is your liver, and these are your muscles. Okay, it's just energy storage. Okay, well, this glycogen is going to be used for energy, but after 8 to 12 hours of of fasting, you don't have more glycogen because you have been using it to produce glucose, to produce energy, and you don't have more glycogen. So the liver is saying, okay, so we don't have more glycogen. So where are going to be produced energy from? Well, the liver says, okay, well, you know what? We have what? A lot of triglycerides and a lot of cholesterol storage in my liver. Why? Because probably this person is not using all this energy and it's just storage there, storage there. And we have to use it, or we need to use it. Well, So after 12 hours, your liver is going to start to use all this energy and in the form of something that's called ketones bodies. Okay. I don't know, probably, yeah, I mean, 2, 3 years ago, right? The ketogenic diet was very popular. Here in USA, I mean, still popular, right? Not like 2 years ago. But I mean, but here the point is here that your body produces ketones. So when you are producing ketones, well, by your liver, you are going to be on ketosis, right? And you don't need to be eating like 80% of your meals from fat because that's a ketogenic diet. You are eating only 80% of your meals, just fat. Why? To stay in ketosis. Why ketosis? Well, because apparently when you are in ketosis, you are losing weight. And yeah, individuals losing weight, okay? But why they are losing weight? Well, very simple. They are losing weight not because ketones, not because they are eating or I mean, because the ketogenic diet. They are losing weight because they are not eating what? Carbohydrates, no carbohydrates, no insulin, no fat storage, right? So that's why. But research mentioned that 1 month after the ketogenic diet, they start to lose what? Muscles, not really fat. And we don't want that, okay? We don't want to lose muscles, okay? You can lose weight. We have to lose weight, but no muscles, okay? Why? Because muscles is just equal to proteins, and proteins is equal to amino acids. And those components are very crucial and are very important to the well functioning of my brain, the well functioning of my kidney, my liver, right? Everything. So, I don't really recommend ketogenic diet at all because all this cholesterol is going to, all this fat is going to go to where? To your liver and to your heart, okay? And very simple because you produce ketones when you are fasting for more than 8 to 12 hours. So now, asking you, if you are eating only 2 meals a day, a good breakfast, a good lunch, okay, and you stop eating till the next day, you will be fasting at least 16 to 18 hours every day. You will be having at least 6 hours of ketosis, okay, 6 hours every day. And ketones are very important. Why? Well, ketones, one of the primary one of the primary function of ketones is for your brain, and we'll see why, right? But let's see about cancer. Different from healthy cells, most cancer cells cannot utilize ketones as their primary energy sources. Why? Because cancer cells, they need what? Sugar, right? And when you are not giving them sugar, so what's going to happen? They're going to be what? Malnourished. And they're going to start to die because they cannot produce energy because ketones are not sugars, are fatty acids. And this is one of the link how fasting can help for individuals with cancer. And we're going to see some contraindications as well, okay? But you see the point with ketones, okay? IGF-1. IGF-1 is another hormone that is going to be decreased during fasting, okay, decreased. And IGF-1 is stimulated by what? By insulin. When you are fasting, well, no sugar, no proteins, insulin low, and protein-rich diets. Protein-rich diets and high levels of insulin are going to elevate the IGF-1. But what is this hormone, IGF-1? Well, it's just a growth hormone like insulin. By the way, its name, it's insulin growth factor 1, okay? Interestingly, it says here the research, chronically high blood IGF-1 levels are associated with increased tumor risk and worse cancer prognosis, okay? IGF-1 is a hormone that's going to nourish any type of cell that you have in your body, Okay, but let's continue. I believe that we have a good foundation with this. What's going to happen in my brain with these ketones? Well, not just ketones, but when I am fasting, well, energy restriction and exercise, it's going to help me to produce something that's called BDNF, BDNF, okay? Brain derived neurotrophic factors. There are some components that your brain is going to be produced when you are fasting and when you are exercising. But the important part, well, what's the benefit of this? Well, the important benefit of this is what? These BDNF are going to help me to have neurogenesis. What is this neurogenesis? Well, production of new brain cells. It's going to start that what? Antioxidant productions. And all the time when you hear the word antioxidants, it's going to be related with the prevention of damage of your cells, okay? And not only that, this BDNF is going to help to my synaptic plasticity. Well, what is this? That communication between my brain cells. And also, it's going to help to DNA repair any damage that we will be having in some of our DNA. It's going to be repaired by these two situations, exercise and energy restrictions. But let me talk with you about dementia or Alzheimer's, okay? Because individuals with dementia or Alzheimer's, they cannot absorb glucose from their brain cells. They have a problem already. They have a damage, okay? So they need what? They need another source of energy. And that source of energy, it can be ketones, okay? I don't know if you heard, um, like a 10, 15 years ago was very, well, 12 years ago was very famous that coconut oil can reverse, um, it can reverse dementia. But why? Well, because most than 65% of the coconut oil is going to be what? Ketones, medium chain triglycerides, or medium chain fatty acids. I am not recommending you, okay, to use coconut oil. And this is just an example how these medium chain fatty acids. So nowadays, you are going here in USA, you are going to Publix, or you can go to Whole Food store. I don't know what's your store in Bahamas. I believe probably you have Whole Food store as well, right? And you will see in the stand medium chain fatty acids or MCT oils, medium chain triglycerides. Oh, they are very expensive. And what they are telling you, oh, they are good for the brain. And that's a good starting to be on ketosis, right? Ketogenic diet. Well, friends, I mean, you are producing these ketones or these medium chain triglycerides when we are eating only 2 meals a day. And the coconut oil, the problem with coconut oil, why I don't really recommend coconut oil is because coconuts are what? Are very high in saturated fat. Almost 92% of coconut oil is just saturated fat that is going to damage your heart. Okay. So remember that I mentioned to you about Hawaii and the experience that I have in Hawaii. Well, if you check the base of these Pacific Islanders, I mean, the base of their meals, the base of their foods, it's going to be coconut oil. Yeah. So I don't know, probably that's a link with cardiovascular issues, but just be careful. If you are gonna use it sparingly, okay? And by the way, any oil is healthy. If you're gonna ask me what's the best oil, well, I can tell you, probably, you won't find the best because none of them is the best. None of it is healthy, right? But just use them sparingly, okay? Don't overuse it. Okay, so we have it here, right? How this fasting and exercise is going to help us with our brain. And remember, I mean, these ketones is not only for individuals with dementia, okay? These ketones are also are going to help me also with memory in general. Why? Because individuals of 65 years and above, they have already deficit in absorption of blood glucose. Okay. So what I'm trying to say with this, they need another source of energy, and ketones can give you another source of energy for your brain. Okay. And that's another good point for fasting. Okay. Okay. Well, fasting is not about 100, 100 hours of fasting, 12 hours of fasting, 24 hours of fasting. Fasting is just the abstinence or the absence of um, nutrition or carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Okay, it's just the absence of these components. Okay, so fasting, it can be for 5 hours or 6 hours, right? And we're fasting. What happened between meals? Well, as soon as you finish your breakfast, one hormone that's called motilin is going to be released. Okay, the motilin is going to be released. But what's the work of this motilin hormone? Well, it's going to stimulate something that's called MMC, or the peristalsis movement. Yeah, but what is this? Well, peristalsis movement is what? It's a propulsive movement initiated during fasting. I mean, after you finish your food, your breakfast, after you finish your lunch, you need to start with this movement, right? That begins in the stomach and moves undigested material from the stomach and in small intestine into the colon. Okay, it's going to stimulate the movement of all these food that you are eating, right? And it's called the housekeeper of the gut, because when you increase peristalsis in the small intestines and clears out the gut and prepare for the next meal. Friends, I took this from a book of physiology, but where did you hear that quote? Don't eat between meals because your stomach needs to have a rest and prepare for the next meal. Interesting, right? But the more interesting is because this movement prevents the backflow of bacteria from the colon, okay, into the small intestines and its subsequent overgrowth in the distal ileum. What is this? Well, so this movement, this propulsive movement is moving like this, right? The muscle, it's pushing the food, right? It's just, if you stop this movement, the material is going to stay there. Okay. But very interesting, because between the small intestine and your large intestine, we have a, and this valve, friends, it has to be closed most of the time. But if this valve is open, bacteria from the colon is going to start to go up into your small intestine. And friends, this is the beginning, or this is the foundation of leaky gut or small intestinal bacteria overgrowth or intestine. Okay, so that advice of eating 5 micromeals a day, it's totally opposite to the normal function of your gastrointestinal tract. Why? Because if you disrupt this movement, will have many issues: indigestion, constipation, probably even acid reflux. Well, this intestinal permeability or leaky gut, right? That's what I'm saying. There is not such a thing as a healthy snack. And remember the video that we watched in the beginning of this meeting, right? What they were saying, they were talking about snacks, right? But I will say something further, right? Something more specific. There is not such a thing as a healthy snack. There does not exist. Why? Because if you have your breakfast at 8 a.m., right? But at 10 a.m., you are eating some what? Some crackers, right? Or you are eating some smoothie, right? What's going to happen? Well, you are going to disrupt the production of this hormone, and all this process is going to be what? Disrupted. Okay? And not just the insulin, remember about the insulin, okay? Remember the problem with the insulin, but also you are going to be shutting down this motiline hormone, okay? So that's why it's very important, not eating between meals, okay? Well, so cardiovascular disease, why fasting? Well, because triglycerides, remember your liver is going to be using all these triglycerides and cholesterol to produce energy, right? Cardiovascular disease, for example, specific hypertension, right? Hypertension, well, there's some studies that mention that supervised water-only fasting in the treatment of hypertension in patients with stage 3 hypertension, right? The average reduction in systolic blood pressure while they were fasting or after fasting was almost 60 points. We have another study, 30 patients with high blood pressure participating in a residential health education program that included the supervision of water only fasting for an average of 14 days, okay? 14 days. You don't have to be fasting for 14 days. We're going to give you some ideas at the end of this presentation, right? And blood pressure reduction and weight reduction and an average reduction in combined medical and drug cost of almost 2,700 per year per subject. They have all these good results. And remember, if you start losing weight, your blood sugar and your blood pressure is going to start to normalize. Okay. Well, what about diabetes? Well, diabetes and obesity, right, friends? Overweight or diabetes automatically is going to leads you to diabetes type 2, okay? Over the last 25 years, type 2 diabetics have successfully fasted, right? With subsequent reduction of elimination of required medications through successful long-term follow-up, given appropriate lifestyle maintenance post-fasting. Again, well, yeah, I have been mentioned marvelous things about fasting, but fasting is not the panacea. Fasting is not the magic bullet, okay? And read this. Perhaps the most famous study on obesity appeared in the postgraduate medical journal of 1973, which reported the experience of a 27-year-old man who fasted without complications for how many days? For 382 days. 82 days, sorry, and lost 276 pounds. Well, the weight of this individual was around 400 pounds, and he lost 276, and his weight remains 180. Okay. How many days can you fast without complications? As long as you have here, and you can see the arrow, right? As long as you have good energy storage, friends, you can fast longer. Okay. So you don't have to be concerned about it. Okay. As long as you have this, because one of the contraindications about fasting is underweight, okay? Underweight. Well, autoimmune conditions and inflammation and autoimmune conditions. Well, fasting says here, 1984, a study of 43 patients found significant improvement in grip strength, pain, swelling of the proximal interphalangeal joint. Swelling in your fingers, right? In the joints of your fingers, right? And also decreased in ESR. ESR is just an inflammation marker, and functional activity after a fast of 7 days. Okay. However, when I was checking this article mentions that individuals having autoimmune conditions, that once they continue with having a plant-based diet, I mean vegan diet or vegetarian diet, they have the better results. Okay, I'm saying again, fasting is just part of the natural remedies. Okay, I'm not saying that you can eat whatever you want and you can fast only 1 or 2 days a week and you will be fine. No, it doesn't work like that. Okay. Well, so let's see. Time restricted eating. Set your clock for weight loss and diabetes. Individuals that they were eating all day long from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., they were compared with individuals, that they were eating only from at 2 a.m., 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., okay? And what's happened at the end? Well, individuals that they were eating only 2 meals a day, and it doesn't have to be from to 8 a.m. your breakfast or your lunch to 2 p.m., okay? Here the key is don't push too late the second meal. And remember, wait to 5 to 6 hours between meals, okay? Your breakfast can be at 9 and your second meal can be at 3, from 10 to 4, but don't push it. That 11 a.m. it can be too late, okay? And 4, 5 p.m. it can be too late the second meal, okay? Remember, I mean, in the morning, your body is able to absorb better your glucose, your sugar, okay? So, okay, what happens with these individuals? Well, the insulin went down. Remember, we need insulin, but we need lower, okay? The insulin sensitivity, I mean, the function of the insulin improved, the function of your pancreas improved, the blood pressure decreased, and the production of free radicals decreased, I mean, toxins decreased, okay? And of course, long-term, the appetite decreased as well. Sorry. Suppressing cancer growth with fasting. Well, how this is going to be working? Reduction of blood glucose. Remember that the main components for nutrition for cancer cells is going to be sugar. Decrease insulin. It's like growth hormones. Okay, remember. A reduction of IGF-1, worse cancer prognosis when you have a high levels of IGF-1, or tumor development as well. Increase blood ketones. Remember, with ketones, the cancer cells are not going to be functioned as with sugar, right? And promote autophagy. The autophagy is just a process where every cell in your body is going to start to detoxify itself, or is going to start to eliminate some very tiny organs that they are old enough to cause problems in our cells. It's going to be like a molecular detox. And this is the detox that we are looking for, okay? Well, so case X, we have a case study, a case X. Individual 57 years old, type 2 diabetes, obesity, high levels of triglycerides and cholesterol. He was on insulin for 12 years, and also using, 3 units in the morning, 30 units in the evening, and Janumid, which is medication that combined 2 medications, by the way. Well, when he came to UC Pines, his blood sugar, even with all these medications and insulin, was 173, way high. The hemoglobin A1C 12.0 was way high, right? Triglycerides was 158. Total cholesterol was 192. LDL or bad cholesterol 124, and he was producing some insulin, okay? But it was not enough. He was still producing insulin. Okay, so he stayed with us for 34 days. The first week he was fasting for 3 days, and then he continued fasting for 1 or 2 days a week. He was eating only plants, okay? Um, Plant-based diet or vegetarian diet, exercise, walking, sunbathing, stress management, spiritual counseling. After 1 month, okay? But in the first 17 days, we saw a dramatical result, okay, in terms of his blood sugar. Blood sugar, 101. But guess what? Here, 1 month before was 173 with medications and insulin, 101 without medications and without insulin, okay? The A1C from 12.0 to 9.7, triglycerides from 158 to 80, just in 1 month. Total cholesterol from 192 to 164. The bad cholesterol from 124 to 101, only 1 month without statins. That all these medications, they have a very bad side effects, right? And he was producing insulin, or even the insulin went even lower than before, but he had better levels of glucose. How? Friends, God's medicine works, but just we need to apply. And one of the problems, friends, as individuals, is that we have the knowledge. All these things, you know these things, right? But when we are going to start to apply, right? And here's a problem because we want to start to apply we when we have hypertension, when we have prediabetes, when we have diabetes, when I had a problem of stroke, when I start to develop cancer. Friends, prevention. Prevention is key. And all these remedies are free, accessible, right? They're accessible to everyone. And they are very simple. And you see, we are as a world, as a individuals, we are so bad that we have to call I am doing a diet when I am eating well. We have to recommend as an exercise 15 minutes. Imagine exercise 15 minutes is an exercise. It's something simple, right? But here's the key: habits. Habits, because having a good habit is going to take us to have a success, right? Well, general principles: low salt, vegan, high fiber, low fat, low protein, and low sugar diet before and after fasting, rest during fasting. And when I'm saying rest, it's not like you are going to be laying down on your couch all day long. No, rest from work if you are able to, okay? But go for a walk. Short walks and light stretching is permissible, okay? I will recommend intense exercise, but at least short walks and light stretching is permissible. Sunlight and a lot of water, okay? How you are going to break the fasting, sorry. You can break the fast with fruits, with oatmeal, with whatever you want, with beans. However, the key is don't overeat, okay? No, don't overeat the first meal after fasting, okay? All right, so contraindications before we finish. Underweight, remember, underweight, if your weight is below the normal weight, be careful, okay? Because I didn't mention this, but after you don't have enough fat storage, you are going to start to use proteins, amino acids, and as I mentioned at the beginning, we don't want that, okay? We don't want to use your muscles to um to um to eat, basically to eat your muscles to produce energy, okay? Underweight, type 1 diabetes, okay? Type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetics, they can fast, but be careful. Don't use your medications, okay? And if you are with insulin, talk with your physician, okay? Well, in any way, talk with your physician, okay? But type 1, they should not be fasting, okay? Type 2, stop the medications during fasting or the day that when you are going to be fasting, okay? Plenty of water. It's very important for those individuals, okay? End stage liver disease, okay? But end stage, when the individual have already many symptoms of liver conditions, okay? High levels of uric acid and gout, okay? That can precipitate a gout crisis, okay? And yeah, basically, I mean, of course, pregnancy, lactation, they should not be on fasting, okay? All right. Well, as I mentioned in the beginning, nutrition, exercise, water, sunshine, temperance, air, rest, and trust in God, they are the true natural remedies. It's very interesting because in the Bible, um, fasting is not related to food. Fasting is not related to 12 hours of not eating, 24 hours of no. Fasting in the Bible or the true fasting is more related to what? Is this not the fast I have chosen to lose the bonds of wickedness, to undo the heavy burdens, to let the oppressed go free, and that you break every yoke? It is not to share your bread with the hungry, and that you bring to your house the poor who are cast out. When you see the naked, that you cover him, and not hide yourself from your own flesh. Then your light shall break forth like the morning, your healing shall spring forth speedily, and your righteousness shall go before you. The glory of the Lord shall be your reward. Friends, Isaiah 58 is not talking about food. It's talking, about what? About love and love to your neighbor. Then you shall call, and the Lord will answer. You shall cry, and he will say, Here I am. If you take away the yoke from your midst, the pointing of the finger and speaking wickedness, if you extend your soul to the hungry and satisfy the afflicted soul, then your light shall dawn in the darkness, and your darkness shall be as a noonday. The Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your soul in drought and strengthen your bones, immune system, bone marrow, right? You shall be like a water garden and like a spring of water whose water do not fail. The fasting have a three components: spiritual, emotional, and physical. But the most important ones is the emotional and the spiritual. And that's why God was telling to the people of Israel, yeah, it's fine that you are fasting. It's okay. I like that. Well, yeah, you should be doing that. But if you are doing it without the emotional and the spiritual component, well, it doesn't have any benefit. Friends, let's think about the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual. And at the end, the true fasting is about love to your neighbor. God bless you. And I think that I don't know how, if someone have questions, I don't know how we can do that.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Adan. So much information, valuable information. I have found that once I do that 16 to 18-hour fast daily, I feel so good mentally and also physically. And of course, there's spiritual benefits also. So I encourage you to take some of these tips that was given today and implement them in your daily routine. So we are fresh out of time, but we're going to take a few questions. We're going to take a few questions. So at this time, I invite Miss Marie Martin to come and lead out in the question and answer period.
Amen. Amen. Wow, what the presentation was such a blessing. All those who would like to ask a question pertaining to today's presentation, please type it in the chat or on Nathalie Lacroix's or Holistic Lifestyle Facebook page. Those who would like to vocally ask a question, please raise your hand and your microphone will be unmuted. Okay, I notice. Do we have anyone raise their hand? I see a comment in the chat. Okay, we have one hand raised. And so, Miss Nathalie Lacroix, you can go ahead.
Okay, Dr. Sanchez, how would you recommend someone who's going to start fasting for the first time? Because at least those 2 meals so that you can get that 16 to 18-hour fast per day. I know when I went to UGPine for the first time, I think in 2016, that was very hard for me. Is there a way that you can gradually move into that 16 to 18-hour fast?
Yeah, that's a good question because it's not easy. Okay, it's a challenge, you know. For me, it was a challenge at that time. It was a challenge, you know. And I one of the process that I started to see, right, or implement with myself, it was, well, I am from Mexico, and of course, I mean, in Mexico, it's a big meal, and you can have variety of food at a time. Well, so what I started to do here is I started to eat something because here it's something like, for example, popcorns, bananas, apples, some vegetables. I mean, steamed vegetables. You know, something that you are going to maintain your stomach in order. You are going to deceive your stomach with some food, okay? Because here's the point, we don't need the third meal in many individuals, okay? Remember, this is not for everyone, okay? If you are underweight, and also if you need a lot of calories during the day because you work, it's probably working in, I don't know, in the field, working in construction, working in a very heavy duty work, probably you need to eat something in the afternoon, in the evening, but no later than 6, 7 p.m. and very light. But here the thing is this, what I realized with myself is because, oh, wow, I'm gonna go, how I'm gonna start, I mean, how I'm gonna stop eating my third meal? Well, so I start little by little. Well, eating some fruits, eating some popcorns, eating probably one piece of toast, then eating some soup. I mean, just to maintain my stomach in order. But then I started a transition. Well, instead of soup, well, probably I'm gonna eat just bananas, just apple, da, da, da. And sometimes nowadays when I am traveling, when I am probably well, exercising, right? I mean, not all the time I eat something. I only eat like a banana and I mean, sorry, a glass of soy milk, but no
Mhm.
later than 6, 7 p.m. However, most of the time I don't eat anything because my stomach is trained already. Here the idea is that you need to train your stomach. Yeah, it's gonna take time. I don't know how long, one week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month, 3 months, but you will get to the point where you won't be hungry because you have to train your stomach. And who's going to lead or rule your stomach is your brain, is a
Yes,
willing.
Ab- absolutely, absolutely.
So don't get desperate and don't get a little bit discouraged that, oh no, why, I mean, when I'm going to stop eating my third meal. No, I understand it's difficult, but you can, okay?
Okay, thank you so much.